Are you ready to learn about partial interval recording? All right, let's get started. As you may remember from the measurable dimensions of behavior section, discontinuous data collection procedures are referred to as time sampling. There are 3 time sampling categories, which include partial interval recording, whole interval recording, and momentary time sampling. We will be discussing partial interval recording in this module. Before we begin, we have to give some necessary initial information. All discontinuous measurement systems have what is called intervals. The observation period can be broken down into smaller portions of time. So let's say we want to measure the next minute of behavior. For this measurement system, I will break 1 minute into 10-second intervals. Overall, in 1 minute, I will have 6 intervals. While you're observing your client, you will collect data on the occurrence or non-occurrence of the behavior during the smaller portions of time. For example, if you're measuring tantruming, when you're collecting the data, you can mark a plus sign if the behavior occurs in the interval, or a minus sign if the behavior doesn't occur. You always want to mark something. That way, the supervisor will know that the client engaged in an alternative behavior during that interval. Usually, intervals are 10 seconds long. However, they can be different depending on the behavior you're observing. When the interval is finished, record the behavior occurred at any time during the interval. The behavior you're observing may occur more than once. That's okay. Multiple occurrences are scored as 1 during partial interval training. Are you beginning to see how you can create intervals in which you can observe behavior and document it as it occurs? Soon, you will see some additional examples to really bring this information home. But first, let's watch this video of Chris. Pretty cool, right? Partial interval recording can be used in everyday experiences. In the video you just watched, you could measure if Chris waves out the window at any time during the interval. In this case, the intervals observed were 5 seconds, in which Chris waved his hand in 75% of the intervals. We'll also teach you how to measure percentage of intervals a little later. Ooh, aren't you excited? Are you ready for some additional examples of partial interval recording? Excellent. Let's go. Here, you see 4 intervals and each interval is 10 seconds. The green line indicates the behavior is occurring within that interval. Once the data is collected for each interval, you can ask yourself, does the behavior occur at any time during the interval? If the behavior occurred at any time in the interval, you will record this with a plus sign. If the behavior did not occur, you will record this with a minus sign. Ready to apply what you have learned? In this first example, how would you record interval 1? With a plus or a minus sign? You would record it as a plus since the behavior occurred during the interval. Would you record interval 2 as a plus or a minus? Did you say a minus sign since the behavior didn't occur during the interval? Yes, it is a minus sign. Give interval 3 a try. How would you record this? It is a plus sign since the behavior occurred during this interval. Will you record a plus or a minus on interval 4? Interval 4 is a plus. Awesome job on observing when the behavior is occurring during each interval and on practicing recording the behavior with the correct sign. Let's recap. Brief intervals are usually 10 to 30 seconds. When the interval is finished, record if the behavior occurred, and multiple occurrences are scored as 1. As promised earlier, we will talk about how to report partial interval recording. This is done through percentage of intervals. In this example, to calculate the percentage of intervals, you divide 3, number of times the behavior occurred, by number 4, number of intervals. This equals 0.75. Then multiply 0.75 by 100, which gives you 75%. The behavior occurred in 75% of intervals. It's time to practice what you have learned. For the following example, we will use partial interval recording to track the student's behavior. As a reminder, intervals are usually 10 to 30 seconds long. For this example, behavior will be marked as having occurred if it is observed at any point during each 10-second interval. The target behavior that you'll be looking for is talking out of turn, which is a disruption. In this example, talking out of turn can be observed as any occurrence of vocalization without raising his hand, or verbal permission from the instructor to speak. Let's go practice recording the client's behavior. His name is Bobby. In the first 10-second interval, Bobby calls out of turn in class 3 times. So you record the interval as a plus sign. During the second interval, he doesn't call out of turn. So you record this as a minus sign. During the third interval, Bobby calls out of turn 1 time. So you record this as a plus. During the fourth interval, he doesn't call out of turn. So you record a minus. In the fifth interval, he calls out of turn 2 times, so you record a plus. During the sixth interval, he does not call out of turn, so you record a minus. During the seventh interval, Bobby does not call out of turn, so you record a minus. After the seventh interval, the school bell rings indicating that you're finished with data collection. Let's review the results. You observed Bobby in the classroom for 7 10-second intervals. You would report the percentage of intervals with occurrence of disruption as 43%. Once you have completed the observation, here's an example of how you could write the session observation notes. They would include your client's name, the date and time, session location, and a summary of the behavior that was recorded. Today, Bobby engaged in disruption for 43% of intervals. While you have learned to record the occurrence and non-occurrence of behavior by using plus and minus signs, there are different symbols that may be used in the field, and that's okay. For example, your company might use an X or O instead. Check with your supervisor on your company's preference. Congratulations! You have just completed learning about partial interval recording. Please complete the checkpoint questions on Canvas to proceed to the next portion of this module.